Okay, so I have a question then leading off of what Rosina mentioned and going back to biofuels. So you mentioned an example where the Mexican government guaranteed a base price for sorghum, which really encouraged farmers to transfer their production from other crops to sorghum. How does this relate to the corn subsidies in the US and ethanol production?
Well, that shift in the Mexican government's priority was because the Mexican government was interested in increasing the amount of animal feed. And that happened before the arrival of corn subsidies, or rather the arrival of NAFTA, which allowed and has enabled a great deal of hunger to flourish in Mexico. And there's a really interesting story here. That when NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, of course, to which Canada is part as well, when that was being negotiated, Mexican officials and US officials were sort of sitting around the table figuring out what it was that they wanted to have free trade in. And the American negotiators weren't going to put agriculture on the table. They understood that the US subsidizes its farmers to the tune of billions of dollars a year, and Mexico doesn't do that. And it happens that the United States subsidizes corn, again, hundreds of millions of dollars a year go into that commodity program. And corn is a vitally important crop in Mexico. And so the US government was like, no, obviously we're not going to include agriculture in this deal. And the Mexican government wanted it to happen. Now that's, the US negotiators, well, why would you do that? Why would you open the door to something that was absolutely going to devastate the poorest people in Mexico? And the Mexican government said, well, no, what we want to do is modernize. We want to, these peasants are hopelessly backward, and they need to be moved from their backward toil in rural areas to the cities, and they will work in factories for you, America, and it'll be fantastic, and they will, their wages will be higher, they will be happier, higher standard of living, win-win-win. The trouble is, of course, that when the floodgates opened, the Mexican farmers, of course, initially started overusing their land and exploiting their land, degrading it in order to be able to just make ends meet. And then they migrated to jobs that occasionally were there, but increasingly we've seen jobs that were created as a result of NAFTA in Mexico now fly to China. And so in Mexico now you have record, in recent years, record levels of hunger. And at the same time, you're seeing higher levels of overweight and obesity of the kind that we see in the United States too. And that to me betrays, is an indication of how the Mexican government has betrayed its rural population. That under the sway of an ideology that suggested that farming is backward and that poverty can be fought by just removing poor people from rural areas and bringing them into the cities, they have destroyed a system of agriculture, or gone out of their way to try and destroy a system of agriculture that was a lifeline for a majority of Mexico's poorest people.